Coast. So good evening and hello to everyone else. My name is Liku Amadi, award-winning attorney and founder of Anasa Law Firm, where I work with coaches, consultants, and expert service providers to help them establish a solid legal foundation for business. And before I jump into our topic, which is one-on-one versus group coaching contracts, let me give my disclaimer. I am a licensed attorney. However, any content, anything that I say in this live is not considered legal advice. It is legal information only for educational purposes. If you need legal advice, you need to go ahead and engage with an attorney one on one, such as myself, so you can get the advice that you need. So, if you haven't seen my content lately, you'll see that I am launching the Legal Business Essentials program, right? And what this is a holistic resource for service providers such as yourself to have the bricks to lay the legal foundation that they need for their business. And this consists of contracts, the ability to ask questions, supplemental resources, and I'm going to leave it at that because right now it's confidential. But if you are a qualified service provider, coach, consultant, or expert, and you're interested in participating in beta, where we do have one-on-one and group coaching contracts available, go ahead and send me a private message or DM so we can talk about whether you're qualified. Link is going to be in the comments. So the reason why I want to outline and just give y'all some background around one-on-one versus group coaching is because I come across too many people who use one contract for both, right? And when you are doing different things, you need different terms, bottom line. Your same contract is not going to serve you appropriately in both situations. And let me give you an example for context. In law school, I was playing basketball as part of the intramural team. And I don't know what shoes I was wearing, but they were low tops. They did not protect my ankles. And, my ankle, I sprained it. First time ever spraining my ankle since playing basketball, since like elementary or middle school, because I didn't have the right shoes, right? The shoes served the purpose of me getting on the court. I was able to run up and down for like the first half. And towards the second half of the game, that is when the shoes failed me because I jumped up, tried to catch the ball, landed wrong because I didn't have that protection, right? So again, I had one tool, I had one means of protection, which yes, protected my feet, but in the game, not so much, right? If you have a one-on-one or if you have a group coaching agreement separately, right, already, but you're doing the other thing or you're doing both at the same time, you're going to be adding another one. Please know that the same shoe will not fit your purposes. And that's what we're talking about. So why? Why, right? What's so different? Can't you just swap in one package of services for the other? I mean, yes, you can, but again, it doesn't really protect you. And three main reasons why. Number one, and before even jumping to number one, just the overall context of these three reasons is you're serving a group of people versus just one person, right? Your responsibility has heightened from just me and you, right? Clients and coach, client and consultant, to now facilitating a group. So it is those individual relationships as well as the relationships among the group dynamic, and what that means for the services that you're providing, right? So we have a heightened responsibility here, which comes down to these three things that you need to think about. Not the only three things, the three critical things that you need to think about. Number one, confidentiality, right? These people who you're serving are entrusting you with their information, depending on, right, like what subject or topic that you're helping them on. But when you're in a group setting where you're sharing certain information about your business or your personal life or your plans under both, right, that may be information that you want to keep confidential. You likely have some type of platform or forum for people to interact, whether it's Slack, whether it's Boxer, whether it's a Facebook group, some other platform, Circle, Mighty Networks, right? There's confidential information in all of that. So what are you doing to protect those confidential interactions among members in those forums where information can easily get screenshotted, copied and pasted, shared with other people, right? So what does the confidentiality look like in those group dynamics? What are you doing to make sure that people are acting responsibly, people are respecting your rules? Because you should have rules in place, right? So confidentiality is one of those things that really becomes heightened because it goes from you working with someone one on one, keeping all their secrets, keeping all their recordings, keeping all their notes, to other people having access to certain information when interacting in those group settings. So confidentiality is super important, and it is related to number two, which is intellectual property. And if you have been following my content, you know your intellectual property is your moneymaker. You know that is your business asset. So it needs to be protected. But again, what happens when you are in a group setting talking about your strategies and doing a hot seat or really diving into the ideas that you have, right? All your frameworks and your strategies and your actual material that you put together, things that you're creating, right? That again, one on one, that's something that may be able to stay confidential, especially if your client has you sign an NDA, right? That's something we can talk about another time. But one on one, it's a lot easier. In a group setting, however, where you have people sharing and exchanging ideas for their business in particular, right? Ideas that they have for the future, ideas that they're currently implementing, the ins and outs of their strategies, right? What do you do when someone else steals or misuses or hears something like, you know what, I like that, right? And revamps and turns it into their own thing? What are you doing to make sure that people's intellectual property is protected or safeguarded? Or better yet, just not loosey goosey all over the place just because they're sharing it within your group dynamics, right? Are you placing any rules or boundaries around the things that people share so that if something does happen, you're not responsible, right? Because ultimately, even though you're responsible for the group, there's only so much that you can control. And the intellectual property is it's a really touchy subject because again, these are your business assets. These are the assets that generate you your money, right? These are the things that keep your business running. So what boundaries and protections are you putting in place to make sure that those things don't fall back on you, but to also make sure that you're setting up these group members, these people who are interacting together, you're setting them up in a way where they know that their stuff needs to be protected, right? And just because you're in a group doesn't mean that, hey, it's going to be automatic protection or this information isn't going to get out, right? So number one, confidentiality. And then number two, related to confidentiality, is just the intellectual property that everybody is sharing when you're strategizing ideas, talking to one another, chatting, hot seating, etc. Because those things are going to come out. And then number three is just the general community interactions, right? Responsibility for the way that people act, whether it's being respectful and professional towards one another, whether it's allowing people to sell or solicit people for, as clients. Like, unfortunately, sometimes people get in group dynamics and it's a means to an end for them. They don't have the best intention. They go in there trying to fish people, trying to do certain things that aren't in alignment with what your group is for. I was in a community that had a large group of people, I'll say, and of note, it was an online membership, not a group dynamic, which could be a little more intimate, but same story still applies, right? Listen to this. So one person was allowed to sell something as everyone else was, and they sold something and it ended up being a scam, right? People didn't get what they paid for. It sounded like a great deal, but they sold it, ghosted, right? People did not get what they paid for. And if you're in a community, you're looking at the community like, where is this person at, right? You're looking at the community leader, you're looking at the community staff, if any, like you're looking at the rules like, yo, someone's going to compensate me. I feel like this dynamic, this environment just provided a means for me to get played, right? And my money was taken, or my intellectual property was stolen because somebody was recording on the side, or there's just that type of conduct where you can't control how people act. So what are you doing to put boundaries around the way that people interact with one another, particularly in your group? And are you communicating to group members that there are certain risks that you have to take, right? You assume that everyone knows that, but you really need to be specific when it comes to people paying you for something in exchange for, what they need, right? So being specific about how people can act, what happens if they don't act accordingly, any risks that are involved, so they can make an informed decision as to whether this group dynamic is, safe for me, because those things could come back to bite you if, for example, you have these things happening on a recurring basis or more than one time, and you're on notice that, hey, this type of thing could happen in my business. This type of thing, has happened. So what are we doing about it? And if nothing has been done, then you very well may be creating an environment where people come in and get played by other people, right? Or whatever other unsafe circumstances happen. So again, when it comes to group dynamics, your responsibility is heightened. And these three critical areas: confidentiality among members, sharing and swapping intellectual property, generating new ideas, right? Number two, intellectual property is our moneymaker. We have to protect that. And then number three, just general group dynamics and how people interact and communicate with one another, and making sure that this is indeed a safe environment for people to do so. In the legal business essentials beta program, we have both one-on-one and group coaching agreements with these differences considered. Because again, you can't wear, like me, the same pair of shoes to just be walking and running and playing basketball. Because if you're wearing those low tops to play basketball, you're going to sprain your ankle. Eventually, you're going to get injured because you're not protected appropriately. So if you have one type of contract and you're using it both for one-on-one and group coaching, know that you may not be protected somewhere, and you might end up spraining an ankle when you're doing business. That looks like chargebacks, refund requests, right? Someone's information not being kept confidential, someone's intellectual property being played with or stolen, which nobody likes, or something unsafe happening in your group dynamic. So if this is something that you want to limit, if you want to make sure you have contracts that are appropriate for each of the services that you provide, then the Legal Business Essentials Beta Program might be a great fit for you. Go ahead and send me a message to see if you qualify. The link is going to be in the comments with the full details. Essentially, if you are a service provider who has a diverse suite of services, I am looking for you to test out these contracts in your business so that what we are building over here truly becomes a valuable resource for service providers like yourself. Questions? Leave them in the comments, send me a DM, and I wish y'all a good night.